Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So the tradition on my channel is that every 100 videos or so, I throw in a fun topic here or there just to kind of celebrate that milestone, but also to experiment with different styles of videos. In this case, we're celebrating 300 videos uploaded on the channel, and technically speaking, that threshold was passed last year, but with the overlapping with the holidays and my prioritization of the videos that I pre-recorded, I decided to hold off a little bit on this one until I had returned. So today we're going to be talking about the top 20 classic legendary champions non-void that I've yet to pull on my account. And I'm defining classic as those champions who were mainstays before I even started playing the game over 4 years ago. They were either super popular, highly rated, or just someone that everyone else seemed to have already. And for each of them, I'll talk about why I do like them, if applicable, how I would build them if I did happen to pull them, and where would they be used, if at all, if I did happen to pull them. Popping into the index, let's start with a couple honorable mentions. These were just outside the cusp of the top 20, and these are ones that I really wouldn't use if I happened to pull them, but they were pretty popular, or at least everyone kind of had them way back in the day. The first one being Norog, who honestly really does need a buff, because having a single target block active skills on the A1 and then only having an AoE block buffs on a 3-turn cooldown is just not going to cut it. Funnily enough, a few weeks ago, I was thinking to myself how I would personally want to see Norog buffed in the future, and I think that can make him a lot more relevant in Hydra and or Chimera. I would change the A1, increase this to like a 55% chance, which would make this a 75% chance to place block active skills when it's booked, and I would expand the A2 to kind of be like the super Ugo or the legendary Ugo, such that he would have block buffs as well as decreased defense, and then kind of add in the aspect that I think Gwendolyn DeSilent has, where if he places 2 debuffs on an enemy, he also adds in decreased speed and or weaken. I don't think they would ever add a third ability despite him probably needing one, just because that would affect the amount of books that people had put into him. I'd also expand his passive to include immunity to fear and true fear debuffs, and then I would also add some other aspect to the passive where he could remove all of these CC debuffs: the stun, the freeze, the sleep, and the fear and true fear from all allies, either when he takes damage or when he deals damage. That way he can be, like I said, a super Ugo, but also incorporate a little bit of Inquisitor Shamail and make him good for dealing with the Head of Torment. And let me know in the comment section down below if you guys agree with my proposal for Norog. The other honorable mention is Brachus the Shifter, who's a pretty solid single target DPS, but I honestly wouldn't really use him anywhere just because I don't really need what he brings. But nonetheless, having a sextuple hitter is pretty darn cool. Now let's dive into the top 20, starting from the bottom with number 20, which is Vizier Ovelis. He was an old school staple of Demon Lord Clan Boss because of this cool A1 where he can extend the duration of all debuffs on the target. And essentially, once he got going with a couple of A1s, all of your debuffs would stay on forever in a Demon Lord's Clan Boss team, and that was his main purpose. But he also has a pretty good side hustle, being one of the few champions in the game who can do a debuff spread, which would allow him to synergize well with someone else who's further down the list. In terms of a build, I'd probably just speed tune him with the other champion we'll talk about later, and I would mostly have fun with him in the arena, but potentially debuff spreading could be useful in the Cursed City. You could spread like block active skills or something like that. Number 19 is going to be Sethalia, who is kind of like a classic buff strip champion way back in the day, kind of in the same conversation as Madame Ceres. Obviously, you're not getting the decreased attack and decreased defense, but starting off with some turn meter manipulation on top of removing all of the enemy buffs was very strong way back then. I think in the modern era, she could be potentially useful in the Cursed City, just being able to strip off buffs, which could be useful in some stages. And so I'd probably just build her in like Perception with enough speed for that kind of job. Number 18 is going to be Ghostborn. So Ghostborn, most infamous for his irresistible AoE decreased defense, but the increased attack on top of that is a pretty nice setup for attack-based nukers. I probably wouldn't need him in much of the PvE content that exists in the game already, but just like Sethalia, he might be useful in the Cursed City. Irresistible decreased defense will just help me deal more damage against those waves. Number 17 is the classic Demon Lord Clan Boss DPS champion, and that is Dracomorph, the king of the Bat Eater composition. Never pulled him. Of course, he's most well known for the AoE decreased defense and weaken, one of the few champions in the game that can actually do that, but he can also put out a ton of poisons on a single target on the A2, and then he does a lot of damage scaling with the amount of debuffs onto the enemy on the A1, so he's the quintessential Demon Lord DPS. Now, I personally don't like to run unkillable teams, so he wouldn't come into my account for that, but he would definitely be a pretty solid faction war style DPS, but also, of course, some utility in the Cursed City. I would definitely build him as a DPS for those purposes, and I guess I forgot forgot to mention the build for Ghostborn. I would consider building him with high resistance just because he doesn't really need accuracy for the AoE decreased defense, just so he doesn't get frozen by Torments or other things like that. So I might consider a higher resistance build on Ghostborn. Number 16 is one of the classic ally attackers in the game who's kind of fallen by the wayside just because we have Mikage now, we have Grand Oak Padraig, we have Cardiel, and a lot more just better ally attackers in the game. But of course, we're referring to Longbeard, most infamous for his team up ally attack with 4 allies. If I got him, I would definitely build him in some sort of cooldown reduction set, so Relentless or Reflex or Merciless, and most likely he would be used in some form of Fire Knight in the Cursed City. Number 15, we don't have to go very, very far, and that would be War Chief. And honestly, he probably wouldn't have made the list, but after his recent buff, he would actually be pretty solid for the Cursed City because of this ability here, which is a single target provoke, but it has a pretty solid 75% chance to place a provoke on every other enemy, and he's super tanky, places a shield. And then kind of like Underpriest Brogni, if anyone gets attacked under a shield, you get a bit of healing on top of the protection from the shield, which can very, very easily sustain your champions in a Cursed City stage. Similar to Sathalia, I'd probably just build him in Perception and focus on getting the appropriate amount of speed and accuracy for whatever stages he'd be used in. Number 14, switching gears here, will be Rey. She used to be one of the hardest hitting attack-based nuker way back in the day, specifically with the A2, where if you're under any debuff, she just has a 1.5x multiplier. But in terms of the modern era, how I would like to use her would be an attack-based champion in the Cursed City with buff removal as well as a chance to freeze. So removing buffs and some CC on an attack-based nuker is very, very handy in a lot of Cursed City stages where you can only use attack-based nuker and control is the name of the game. I would definitely build her for damage because she does have pretty stellar multipliers despite having a relatively low base attack, but I would make sure that I have enough accuracy and speed for whatever stages she'd be used in. Next on the list, number 13 is going to be Big In from the Ogryn tribes. Don't have him either, and you're probably sensing the pattern by this point, but he would also be useful in the Cursed City because he has a chance to AoE stun here on the A2, but also apply decreased accuracy, which again in the Cursed City will increase the likelihood that the enemies might resist when they try to do stuff back to you. But also he has this double hitter here, which can decrease turn meter and also place decreased speed, which again helps you lap the enemy teams in waves in the Cursed City. And he has all AoEs across all of his abilities, so he is easily a candidate for a stun set, which is kind of the meta sometimes, at least in the Cursed City. Number 12 is actually a previous fusion, but of course it was before I'd started playing the game, and that is Kreela Witch-Arm, most infamous, of course, for the ally attack here on the A2. Just like Longbeard, she would definitely come in handy in the Cursed City against any Fire Knight type of stage, and I would try to build her in some sort of cooldown reduction set, Reflex, Relentless, or Merciless. With number 11, we're finally breaking free of the stretch of the Cursed City-esque champions with Lysandra, which is kind of like a lot of people's classic speed queen manipulation champion in the game, but nonetheless, do not yet have Lysandra on my account. Of course, she is most well known for the Energize ability, lots of turn meter manipulation on top of placing increased speed, the speed aura in all battles, and also being able to fully deplete turn meter on the A2. If I did pull her, I would definitely consider using her against the Dark Fae because she's definitely S tier for that particular fight. But I do think her primary role would be in the arena as a turn meter manipulator, and I'd probably try her out in Feral, use her with the immunity buff of 4-piece Feral while also getting the benefits of an effective perception set. Moving into the top 10, we have an oldie but a goodie and the bane of everyone's campaign experience, that being, of course, Mortu Macabre, most famously known for, of course, the Peril ability, which hits super, super hard, ignores all defense, and it blocks revive on enemies. I'm a huge fan of block revive abilities because, of course, when you actually get it off, the person, whoever you kill, cannot come back, which is never going to go out of style in terms of utility. And he has most certainly come in and out of the meta over the years, but in the current state of things, I think he's a decent way to handle Marius, as long as you have a bolster set or some other form of protecting him and other allies. Having a Marius come in there and hit him 3 times is a really good chance to proc the Fire Rage passive and unlock Peril to cut in, do something, and block revive on Marius or anyone else. I am not a fan of using Stone Skin on my champions, to my own chagrin in most cases, but I'd probably try him out in Untouchable with Lightning Cage to try and protect the block debuff so that he doesn't get enfeeble on him if I were to use him against a Marius. But also I considered trying to get him into a bolster set, like I mentioned, to protect my team from Amarius. Number 9 is one of the few AoE counterattack champions in the game, of course, that being Martyr, formerly touted as the best champion in the game way back in the day, and of course most well known for the AoE increased defense as well as the counterattack on a 3-turn cooldown. For the longest time she definitely fell by the wayside, but she definitely saw a bit of a resurgence when it came to hard mode Fire Knight and the changes to the faultless defense blessing, which makes her the best counterattack champion for dealing with that fight. And I would definitely build her in a shield set just to protect the team, while also ensuring that we can reflect the damage from the blessing and get as many pips into the Fire Knight shield as possible. Heading back into the arena focus, we have number 8, which is Queen Ava. As I mentioned before, I am a huge fan of block revive abilities, and she is no slouch when it comes to that. On a 3-turn cooldown, a single target double hitter ignores 50% defense by default, and also you only have to build her with 85% crit rate, which does mean you can index more into speed and or crit damage. After her fairly recent buff, this is strong enough to almost break Stone Skin on the first hit, but if you happen to be dealing with a UDK, he can soak up 1 hit, but the second hit will go to your actual target, and it's very likely to kill that person. I've seen it take down full HP, full tank mode duchesses and stuff like that. It's absolutely crazy. To no surprise, I would definitely use her in the arena, and she would be built in a savage or lethal set. Next up, number 7, and we actually don't have to go very far at all. It's one of the few bombers in the game that I don't yet have, and that is Astrolith, who most infamous for placing 2 bombs on a single target enemy that detonate after 1 turn, and they are irresistible bombs. This is the champion I was referring to when I was talking about being able to debuff spread with Vizier earlier, but I do also have 2 Hanorok at my disposal, so I could run either one of them with her and have that cool bomb spread strategy with irresistible bombs. I think she'd be extremely fun to use in certain scenarios in Classic and Tag Team Arena, and I would opt to build her in like Cruel and Speed, but also index into Resistance because that would reduce the chances she gets polymorphed by placing the bombs, and of course she doesn't need any accuracy to place these bombs. Number 6 is probably one of the most popular reset champions in the game, who yes, I still do not have myself, and that is of course Prince Kymar, most infamously known for the Seal of Magic ability that fully resets the cooldown of all ally skills and gives them a little turn meter boost to boot, but he's also fairly well known for the A2 full buff strip and placing asleep on a 3-turn cooldown. I don't personally have the champions that would enable me to have some sort of cool reset type composition, so for me he'd primarily be just an arena champion as he is, with the AoE buff strip and the sleep, and then coming back and resetting abilities on a nuker, which coincidentally would pair very well with like a Queen Ava or someone else who blocks revive, and so they have their abilities back sooner rather than later. In terms of a build, I think ideally he'd be in 6-piece Feral or 4-piece Pinpoint, but most likely he would probably just be in triple perception given the gear that I have. Number 5 is probably the most likely to shock the most people, but it is nonetheless Lord Champfort. Why on earth would I want this guy is probably the question coming to your mind, but he is literally the best decrease speed champion in the game for the Iron Twins, because all he has to do is be attacked on a 1-turn cooldown, so all he has to do is take a turn, and he can easily replace decrease speed whenever the boss hits him with an AoE. But on top of that, he also has decrease attack, which can help the team take less damage, and decrease accuracy, which can reduce the likelihood that we take the Iron Branch stacks from the Iron Twins, and then decrease defense on the A1 to boot. Why not enable some of the DPS on my team? It is most certainly very niche, but nonetheless, I do farm Iron Twins every single day, and so having a champion that's a little bit more reliable at keeping decrease speed on the boss is not a bad thing, and I wouldn't mind having him on my account. In terms of the build, I would make sure that he has enough accuracy to land his debuffs against the Iron Twins stage 15, and I would build him in a Guardian set because he is a fairly tanky champion with a high amount of HP and a respectable amount of defense. With number 4, we're definitely getting into the heavy hitters that would make a significant impact on my account. This champion is the one that everyone was asking me if I had when I was struggling to beat stage 6 in Soulcross of the Cursed City last rotation, and that is of course the infamous Duchess Lilitu. Ironically, she's also like one of my most hated champions in the game to go against because Stone Skin builds on her are so pervasive. She's super tanky with the passive, and with all the veils everywhere, most of the time you're forced to attack her and not be able to kill anyone else on the team. But nonetheless, for my unique situation, I think she would be an upgrade to my Rector Drath for my hard team against Hydra Clan Boss, and I do run Vol the Destroyer in that team as well, so I would benefit greatly from having increased attack and block buffs on top of the perfect veil that is not conditional on healing something like Rector Drath is. I know most people would probably opt for Stone Skin for the arena or protection sets for PvE, but in my unique instance for the Hydra team, I'd probably want to run her in Reflex and Impulse to maximize the amount of cooldowns reduction she can get on the Perfect Veil and or the Revive. The top 3 will not shock anyone who has been following me for any length of time, and number 3 is of course Molly Tankard from the Dwarves. She's by far most famous for the A2, which is a contactless affinity-friendly AoE provoke, but also the potential to provoke for 2 turns, which can be absolutely devastating. But let's not forget her Rowdy Crowd passive, which can boost the turn meter of all allies whenever she's hit, and even more so if she's hit by a boss on a 1-turn cooldown, which is very, very easy to do and is very useful. She gives a lot of turn meter filling in Hydra Clan Boss. And then to boot, she also has a cool revive ability on a 4-turn cooldown, and then HP burn on the A1, why not? Obviously, her kit screams Hydra Clan Boss, Mischief tanking, and provoking the Head of Decay. She would replace Contra the Cyclone, who I use on my Brutal team, and also be a little bit more reliable of a reviver over Mighty Uko, who I have to pause the run if anyone dies to make sure that I can use the revive when I need to. But given the fact that she is an AoE provoker, she would also probably come in handy in the Curse City as just a control champion, as well as the turn meter fill whenever she's hit. In terms of the build, I would definitely try to get her into a Reflex set, probably mixed with Perception, and optimize her stats to be a Mischief tank, so high enough resistance, while also having enough accuracy for Brutal Hydra. Numbers 1 and 2 are somewhat interchangeable, but nonetheless they are in a particular order, and of course they're going to be the Poison Exploders, starting off with number 2 being Xavia. It is by no means a surprise that my most wanted champions in the game are the Poison Explosion champions, because I think it's the most fun way to deal with waves in the game. It's not as relevant as it used to be way back in the day. I think Seers kind of dominated the meta nowadays, on top of other forms like Siegfried kind of one-shotting things, but nonetheless, even if it's just for Dragon hard mode, I'd still like to run and build a Poison Explosion team. So for Xavia, her Poison Explosion ability is of course her A3, which deals all damage from poison debuffs instantly. However, the one knock on her is that it only deals half damage when it's used against bosses. She also brings an AoE double hitter that can place poisons as well, just in case you need that and you don't have enough from other people on the team. Depending on the team around her, I could see running her in a Toxic set just for the extra poisons in case the team falls a bit short, or I could opt to go for like Savage and Perception just to take advantage of the fact that she is a nuker in her own right and increase the chances that she actually kills the targets with the A3 ability. And that of course leaves us with number 1, my most wanted non-void legendary in the entire game, and that is Eleanor. Just like Xavia, she is a full poison combustion champion on the A3, can deal damage from all poison debuffs instantly, and most notably, there's no damage reduction against bosses, and she doesn't actually have to attack, she just activates all the poisons all at once. She also has a 100% chance to place poisons on an AoE, as opposed to Xavia, who I think has like a 75% chance on her double hitter, and as long as Eleanor has full crit rate, she can place 2 poisons instead of 1, and then she also has to boot an irresistible HP burn on the A1, which is just kind of a fun bonus in terms of DPS. Once again, depending on the exact composition, I could see running her in a Toxic set just for the extra poisons to explode. But if I didn't need that, I'd probably just opt for a little bit of Perception here and there and speed tune her appropriately with enough accuracy for whatever content I'd be running her in. So there you have it. That's the top 20 non-void legendaries that I have yet to pull on my account. Let me know in the comment section down below who surprised you the most that I don't have after playing the game for over 4 years. And while you're at it, let me know who your most wanted non-void legendary is in the game. Thanks again for all the love and support you guys have given me over the couple of years that I've been in content creation, and here's to the next 100 videos on the channel. As always, if you did enjoy this video, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel, and feel free to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.